So my name is Jasmine Gonzalez. I am a coaching specialist and trainer with Organizing Empowerment Project. And we do a couple of things at OEP. We are a software vendor, so we have a relational organizing tool called Empower. But we also actually train and work with organizations across the country to implement relational organizing kind of strategies into their campaigns. And so everyone who is here is someone that we've partnered with before. They are some of the best in their field at doing relational organizing. And so what we're really going to focus on in this panel is talking a little bit about what relational organizing actually looks like, and how some of these organizations have actually, successfully implemented it into their strategies, especially with the switch into, being at home, moving to digital with the COVID-19 pandemic. So before we really dive into it, I want to give all of our panelists the opportunity to introduce themselves. So I'll go ahead and call on each person one by one, but we'll start off with Saru.
Here I am. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. And Jasmine, tell me how long I have right now.
If you want to just give a quick introduction, so your name, organization, and your position there, and then we will move on to questions after.
Okay, cool. My name is Saru. I'm the president of One Fair Wage and the director of the Food Labor Research Center at UC Berkeley. I'm based in California, sorry. I think that's it, right?
Yep, thank you so much. Jasmine Jones.
Hi guys, and happy Friday to everyone. I'm Jasmine Jones, and I am the National Organizing Director for Rock the Vote. And we are 82 days away, and we're looking forward to building political power amongst our young people across the country. So thank you for having me today.
And Emily.
All right, hi everyone. I'm super excited to be here. I'm Emily Isaac. I am the Voter Mobilization Director at Move On. And yeah, excited to chat with you all about relational today.
And Dylan?
Hey folks, my name is Dylan. I'm currently the Relational Organizing Manager for Sunrise Movement and formerly was the Organizing Director for New Hampshire Youth Movement. Thanks.
And Denisha.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me here today. I actually said I'm Denisha Montfort Williams. I'm the Associate Executive Director for the North Carolina A. Philip Randolph Institute. Happy Friday.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. So just a kind of brief overview of what relational organizing is for those who may not be familiar. Relational organizing is basically a style of organizing where we are empowering our field organizers, our volunteers, everyone that we're working with to kind of reach out to the networks that they're already, engaging with in the day-to-day. So this means reaching out to friends, to family, coworkers, classmates, etc., and using those networks to really mobilize our communities. For a lot of groups, speaking just as my own kind of representative here, as a daughter of, Mexican-American immigrants, a lot of this kind of style of organizing is something that we're already very used to. We're creating these trusted messenger networks where we are, gathering information, we're spreading it among our communities, and then that's how we, build power and create change from there. So it's something that we've begun to implement in a lot of our organizing, especially now that we are, having to pivot with the COVID-19 pandemic. Many of us are at home. We are using, digital strategies or finding other ways to organize that don't involve, door knocking or phone banking or any of those other kind of in-person things that we were so used to. So relational organizing really is, it's accessible. People are able to do it from home, and they're able to tap into the networks of people that they already have. And so this is something, again, that every panelist here has implemented in some way, shape, or form with their organizations, with their campaigns. And so we're going to go ahead and give each person some time here to talk about what their organization is working on, how relational organizing actually plays a difference in their strategy, and what the kind of future is going to look like moving forward here. So once again, we'll start with Saru, just a couple of minutes here to talk about some of the work you've done.
Great. I'm going to talk super fast because there's a lot to share. There were about 14 million workers in the restaurant industry prior to the COVID-19 pandemic shutdown. And for years and years, even up to 2016, we had been trying to tell various campaigns, including the presidential campaign, that we were sitting on a huge population of workers that don't vote, largely don't vote, that shouldn't be ignored, and that we knew the key issue that really would motivate them to vote, which is their wages. We had surveyed 10,000 workers across America. We knew that the fact that they earn a sub-minimum wage, still $2.13 an hour. That's the current federal minimum wage for tipped workers in the United States. It's a literal legacy of slavery. 13 million workers, mostly women, disproportionately women of color, single moms, who are waitresses at casual restaurants earning $2 and $3 in most states in the United States of America and living off of tips. We knew that was their primary issue, and we had gone to campaign after campaign and parties and said, listen, we're sitting on this huge population of people who don't vote. We know the issue that will motivate them, and nobody listened. So in 2017, we set out to prove that they were wrong in Michigan, and we actually collected 400,000 signatures to put this issue on the ballot for November 2018. And to raise the wage from $3, which it currently is in Michigan, to $12. And the Republicans who control the state legislature knew something that the Democrats apparently didn't. They were very worried that this would drive working people and working women to the polls. And so they agreed to take it off the ballot and make it law. They quadrupled the wages of waitresses in Michigan, openly saying, we're doing this to keep people from voting. We promised to gut this after the election. They were very open about it. So what we did is we worked with OEP. We mobilized, we trained about 5,000 restaurant workers to each put their peers into the Empower app. We ended up with a universe of around 20,000 restaurant worker voters, and we saw a 300% vote out increase from 2014 to 2018 among this population. They had voted at a 12% voter turnout rate in 2014 and almost 40% voter turnout rate in 2018. And even if you put aside some of the other factors that made people turn out in 2018, the program still had a significant impact. And what we realized was, what we knew was that it was the issue. We knew it was the issue. What we talked to people about is, we need to tell, waitresses need to tell waitresses, tipped workers need to tell tipped workers. We just want to raise. If we want to keep it, we've got to go vote. We've got to go vote these people out of office who are going to take our raise away. And it worked. And we went around sharing this lesson saying, look, you should not be organizing this. I mean, you should not be ignoring this population. These are the largest and fastest growing workforces. They happen to be the lowest paid. You should not be ignoring this population. And B, we know what will motivate them. It's the issue that they care about the most, their wages. And it is peer-to-peer. And they are frankly, I would ask this group, if you had been left behind at $2 and $3 by both Democrats and Republicans, would you vote? Would you care who's voted into office because you've not seen any party do anything for you pretty much ever? Every time, even in most states, the wage went to 15, these workers were left behind by Democrats. And so it was about talking about this issue. Frankly, it was also about organizing so that after the election, we could hold people accountable, because our people are not going to vote unless they see some change. So we did see some change, we did see some momentum, and we geared up to do it again for 2020 in Michigan and Pennsylvania. And then of course the pandemic hit, 9 million restaurant workers lost their jobs. And we were kind of thinking about how we were going to retool. We had planned to really hire up and do a lot of work in Michigan and Pennsylvania, just as we had done in 2018, same peer-to-peer model. But the pandemic hit, and our people, as you may know, were some of the most devastated. Restaurants across the country shut down. 9 million workers lost their jobs. 60% were unable to access unemployment insurance because of the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers. They were told by their states that their wages were too low to qualify for benefits. So they were basically penalized for the wage that wasn't set by them. And luckily, we created a fund, a relief fund for these workers, raised about $23 million. 200,000 workers applied for relief. And it turned out that they were the very same workers that we gonna go out and find. They were the single moms and the waitresses, the hard to reach, unlikely voters who we were gonna go out in the streets and find and get into the app and ask them to share their peers in the app. And so we ended up, with this amazing list of people who were asking us for help, wanting to engage with us. We started organizing very large teletown halls with them, and then basically started a program of calling them, talking to them about their needs, very, very dire needs, and then talking about how we needed to organize for change, getting their peers into the app. And we even mobilized something called Freedom Summer. I also teach at UC Berkeley, so we were able to organize about 150 students from around the country to be a part of something called Freedom Summer, where they were assigned workers in parts of the list in Michigan and Pennsylvania, Florida, trained to actually do the peer-to-peer work. And so I'm going to wrap up, I know, because we want to move on, but I just will say, there's a lot of potential. We ended up reaching about 100,000 voters in Michigan in 2018 in the service sector, low wage service sector. There's potential to do a lot more here. We've got 200,000 workers, and that's not even mentioning their peers that are in the list. So there's the potential to gear up much, much bigger. And people are angry. I think being told for a lot of people who are just struggling to survive on a $2 or $3 wage plus tips, being told by their states that you're paid too little to get benefits that they had paid taxes to get was a moment of awakening for them, that if the state is telling me I'm paid too little, probably I'm paid too little and I should not go back to work for that and risk my life. And so people are angry, people are motivated. It's in a really amazing time. And we've got a huge program that's allowing us to do it all virtually, and I can say more about it afterwards. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Saru. Next, we'll go to Jasmine. If you want to talk about your program.
Yes, 2020, right? A lot going on, a lot of moving parts, but we are working really hard to ensure that young adults across country are still building political power within themselves and casting their ballots throughout this 2020 election. I oversee our Relational Organizing Ambassador Program, and from there we have young leaders across our country to mobilize family, friends, their college campuses to ensure that we are incorporating a lot of civic activations to ensure everyone has their voices heard in 2020. Not only on the federal levels, but also focusing on state and local elections, because that is also key to our electoral process. I am very excited to have working with some amazing young leaders who are shaping and being the voices for our future. Going into this election, 40% of American voters will be Gen Z and millennials. And these are the ones who are doing the storytelling, doing peer-to-peer, reaching out, meeting voters where they are to talk about issues that matter to them most. That's the most rewarding part of my job, even in the midst of the pandemic, and we're all having the new normals and not being able to interact with each other on a GOTV effort on the ground. The great thing about relational organizing, it can be done from anywhere. So now we're creating that dynamic and creating that content for us to work from our PJs, work from your new office that's in your kitchen / studio apartment, wherever it may be. If you're taking over your husband or your wife's man cave or women's wine cellar for work, we're all are just trying to find ways to ensure that we are building a lot of great content for the future. And our program, we connected with OEP this year. This is the first ever relaunch of the Relational Organizing program for Rock the Vote. And this year we are celebrating 30 years of being a trusted source when it comes to protecting our elections. And so partnering with OEP has been a great experience because we're able to showcase new tactics for the future. I can also, it's encouraging our ambassadors and my coordinators. We have some great leaders across country. We have ambassadors in battleground states, Florida. I see people in the chat from there, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Arizona, Iowa, those areas that we had to take a full concentration on. We have young leaders in these areas mobilizing their family and friends, and they're actually talking about issues that matter to them. And that is how we're going to turn out vote. That is how we're going to be an inspiration. We do a lot of different activations, and we're using relational organizing to do all these things. We also highlight a big part of our program is covering different things that's happening this year. And census is one of those things. We are doing a lot of tactics to ensure that people are filling out census forms, understanding what it is, why it's important. And this is a moment where even though we're all having frustrations and just different things that's happening us personally, and whether it's work related or civically related, we're taking the time to educate. We're taking the time to showcase that we want to put our frustration to the ballot. We want to put our frustration and to exercise our right to vote. We want to educate people that voter suppression is very real. Black Lives Matter is very real. The pandemic is very real. We've had college students who had to go through a tough ordeal this year. Prom, I mean, being a high school senior, that was one of the things I was super excited about. And the fact that we had a lot of kids who missed out on those great moments, and they would never get that moment back. We're using that energy for them to showcase, like, this is why your vote matters. This is why you have every right to be frustrated. We are all over 2020. I said to myself, if the 2021 plane comes tomorrow, I'm hopping on it and I will leave 2020 behind. But in the meantime, we're taking this time to really mobilize and really showcase that we are here to stay and that we have an ability to move like no other before. And OEP has been that source to my coordinators, to my ambassadors. We're teaching volunteers on our Rock the Vote team. We are showcasing that we are having a voice and everyone is invited. And that's one thing I love about the relational organizing program of it, is that we're not excluding anybody. Everyone is welcome to the table. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a mission to make a difference, but they need to be invited. They need to be asked, and we're giving that opportunity from the comfort of their own home. So I'm excited to be talking and showcasing ways of how we're doing these things. We are a trusted source when it comes to election reminders, especially focusing on our local and state elections this year, and making sure that we are mobilizing how we're voting and providing additional options as well. And all of that is doing it together. So I am very excited just to be in a program where not only as a leader, but as a listener, to hear the cries and the frustrations of our peers, and to figure out ways of how we can mobilize and how we can activate that change, because it's here and we're taking the chance and the opportunity to do just that. And so it's a humbling experience more than ever, just to be working with some dynamic leaders, because I couldn't say that 10, 12 years ago, being a freshman in college, that everyone was thinking how the kids now are thinking when it comes to gun violence and global warming and climate change, issues that are really going to impact our future. And the great thing about it is younger adults, it's kids who are 12, 13, 14, 15 years old who are really activating the change. And so these are the ones that we're mobilizing, engaging. Even if they can't vote yet, we're providing them options. If you can't vote, you can be part of our relational organizing program, because your mom can vote, your dad can vote, you have older cousins who can vote. So we're taking advantage of every opportunity that's being presented to showcase you are invited to the table and you deserve to eat with us. So I'm excited to be in this moment, because it's definitely very, very important as we move forward the next 82 days. So thank you again, Jasmine and OEP and Netroots, because this is why we're all doing it together, and the panelists, and for all those who are joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jasmine. Next, we'll go to Emily.
All right. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Emily Isaac. I'm with Move On their voter mobilization team. I'm our voter mobilization director at Move On, and we are running a big relational voter turnout program this year, which I'm really excited to chat with you all about. But a little bit about, how I got into relational organizing. I've been all in on relational organizing since 2018. I started out as a field organizer. I've been doing electoral campaigns since I got out of college, and I was trained as an organizer on a very, specific approach to organizing, where I would call volunteers all day long and ask them to knock doors and make phone calls. It was very hard, challenging work, and I lost many elections, working to elect progressives. And after those elections, I'd ask myself, how many votes did we really move with all of the work that went into that. And then I was able to join the Sri Kulkarni campaign in Texas as a congressional campaign in 2018, which totally like transformed my whole approach to organizing and how I understand, especially, you know, electoral organizing. So that district is one of the most diverse districts in the country. Over 100 languages are spoken in that district in Texas, where I was able to organize. And we centered our program around multilingual relational organizing. It was the first time I'd even ever heard of relational organizing. And it was all about getting our supporters and volunteers to talk to the people they know and talk to the people in their own communities. And we were able to reach so many more voters through this method than we ever could have reached through a quote, you know, traditional voter contact program of just knocking doors, making phone calls relentlessly. And yeah, so it was an amazing campaign, and now I'm at Move On, and so excited to see the same sort of organizing that we were doing in that congressional race at a national scale. We're running a program based off of a vote captain model, which I encourage you all to check out. This was piloted by Turnout Nation earlier this year and found huge, enormous turnout impacts. You know, I think it was 13 percentage point turnout impacts, which is like unprecedented. That's just huge, huge. And so the model is basically about empowering supporters to take responsibility for supporting a group of 10 to 15 people who they know through the voting process. And of course, this year, the voting process looks a lot different for most voters. It's about how to not only register to vote, but to request your absentee ballot, to properly fill out your ballot, to return your ballot or safely vote in person. So we're super excited about this program, and I'm excited to share with you all, you know, some of the things that I've learned along the way, and you know, some of the best practices that we've picked up doing this work.
Awesome, thank you so much. Next, we will go to Dylan.
Hey everyone, thanks for sharing so far. Yeah, my name's Dylan. I use he, him pronouns. I formerly was the organizing director for New Hampshire Youth Movement, and that's where I've spent the most of my time doing relational organizing. So I'm going to talk about that first. But I'm currently the relational organizing manager for Sunrise Movement, and I'll touch it based on that a little bit after. So relational organizing played a big part in our presidential primary program last fall. We were running a program to help Bernie Sanders win the New Hampshire primary. And if any of you have ever lived in a swing state, you know, or an early primary state / caucus state, you know that voter contact really is, it's a part of your life. You know, you understand politics a little bit different than most people. So especially on college campuses, it has gotten to the point where college campuses are actively working to stop the programs that are, they call them annoying students, but they're really working hard to get these campuses and these programs to be political like free zones, because there's just so much effort to get students out to vote, especially in New Hampshire that has such a large electorate of young voters that can swing elections, that we had to get super creative for our program. And when we talk about relational voting, relational organizing, one of the things that we have to take into play is who's the messenger, you know? Especially when it comes to millennials and Gen Z and younger, is that political ads and campaign messages and mailers are not really working for my generation. We're really good at sniffing out bullcrap, and we know that for the past, our whole life actually, that neither Democrats or Republicans have really been able to do anything that made our life better. So when we want to talk about elections, we're really only talking about it with our friends. And a place that really happens at is in the dorm buildings. You know, 70% of students on college campuses, undergrad students, live in dorm buildings. And those are the students that are likely not going to vote, the 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds, and the 20-year-olds. And a traditional tactic that a lot of campaigns or voting organizations will use is called dorm storming. And it's this tactic where you just send a volunteer into a dorm building in a very risky situation that they usually don't know anyone in, and they knock on doors and annoy students. And there's usually these people called hall monitors or whatever they're called in college, and they track these people down and kick them out. And if they're students, they can usually get in trouble if they live in a different dorm. And there's a big safety factor involved that police may get involved, and it's just a terrible opportunity, and it's a terrible experience for a volunteer. So what we decided was we need to get really creative in how we can interact with these dorms, because that's where the students are at. And we started pulling all this data, and we were like, oh, 800 students live in this dorm, and 400 students live in this dorm, and there's 5 floors on this dorm. And then we brought all this data to our teams and our hubs, we were calling them on campus, and people were just signing up. They're like, wait, I live in Thompson Hall floor, and I live in Thompson Hall 9. And we were able to map out that we knew somebody who lived on almost each floor of every dorm. And then those people, for the next 4 to 5 months, their job was to find the people who lived on their dorms, get their phone numbers, and then like slightly build a relationship with them and slightly pressure them to pledge to vote. Whether it was in the bathrooms and the shared like floors, or it was in the hall lounges, or it was at lunch on their way there. We were building relationships with these people and not doing the traditional program that they would just get canvassed. And what we saw was that this really changed the way that we were mapping out our programs on campuses. And it made the goals and it made the structure seem so much more sensible to our volunteers, instead of having them just canvass for 2 to 3 hours at a time, which was just like really game changing for the way we looked at student organizing in New Hampshire, and would love to talk with more people about that. So now fast forward to now, I am now working with Sunrise Movement, who was a huge partner of ours back in 2000, or for the primary. And we're going to strictly use relational organizing for our swing state program between now and the election. And what that looks like is we have massive hubs in states like Wisconsin and North Carolina, who, can't door knock and cannot, don't really have massive connections to a lot of voters there. And so we don't want to use the voter file for that voter contact. We're going to have these people start recruiting their friends and families to join what we're calling friend banks, where we're going to spend 2 to 3 hours a week with each other, listening to music, playing trivia, doing games, while we're contacting our friends and families and neighbors and old teachers and old coworkers, and walking them through a series of prompts that start with getting them to pledge to vote, and somewhere along the line are getting them to join the friend banks, and then getting them to make a plan to vote. And then they're even going to start reaching out to their own people and building their own list. And we're going to develop a lot of coaches to do this too. You know, once you get asked to join a friend bank, you're also going to get asked to make a commitment to the movement, you know, to say that you will find 20 more people in your life who will reach out to some of their networks. And then you will spend the next 8 weeks, starting in September through the election, just following up with them once a week and just asking that they feel safe about the election, that they requested a ballot if they needed one. And then somewhere closer to the election, we're also going to bring these people into the movement for the long run. We're going to invite them to mass calls, and we're going to invite them to organizing meetings. So that way, after the election, we've built up the movement leaders that we have, and we don't lose them after the election. Because we often see that with electoral programs that aren't based in relationships and don't center the people that they're trying to get to vote, that they get contacted once and they turn out and then they get forgotten about. And so much money gets moved to make this voter contact happen, and then it's all gone, even if we win the election. So we think that relational voting or relational organizing is really the only way that we can build organization capacity and get the most amount of voter contact in a program. So we're super excited to be working with Organize. I just call it Empower. Sorry, I have a hard time saying the whole name. But we're really excited to be working with Empower, and really excited to be on this panel and hearing from how folks are doing their programs. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dylan. And then finally, we have Denisha.
Man, I don't know how to follow all these guys right here. Like, this is some good stuff all of them are doing. And it sounds like a lot of similar stuff that we're working with too. And outside this panel, I'm actually looking forward to reaching out to each of you and, pick your brain some more. But as far as North Carolina A-Phil Randolph Institute in North Carolina, we have probably about 13 chapters, and we're continually building chapters here. These chapters consist of our, what we call traditional chapters, but we also have our youth and young adult chapters, which is my favorite. And then we have our Byron Rustin chapters, which is our LGBTQ family, which I'm the executive director of that chapter. And we've been doing a lot of work, as far as I can remember, it's 1999, where we've been organizing and doing the traditional, door knocking, phone banking, et cetera. But as we all know, and as all of you said, 2020 changed that a lot. So we all really had to jump in and figure out, okay, how do we still get this work done? Because clearly it's needed. Clearly there's still broken policies in politics and stuff that people like us and the ones on this call have to adjust and figure out how to make a better future for ourselves today and in the next generation, correct? So we really jumped into the Empower. I love it. When I first touched base with it and trying to understand relational organizing, trying to put it together, my mind was going like, okay, I like to be right in front of a person. But I realized that what we got going on, not only with COVID-19, but people as a whole with busy lifestyle, it is now easier to reach them through digital canvassing and digital phone calls or digital social media and that type of concept. So what I took to was the social media platform. And we just went on that social media platform from Facebook to Instagram to Snapchat to TikTok and plugged in, especially with the Facebook piece, plugged it in to the relational organizing piece on OEP. Because guess what? All your Facebook people are your friends, families, co-workers, classmates, some that you really didn't like, but you still accepted them on your friends just to see what they had going on and maybe show them what you had going on. But still, that's contacting information, correct? A lot of times it has email information, phone numbers, etc. And plug those two together and started building relationships. I have friends now through Empire or through relational organizing that I really didn't even like in high school, but now as an adult, we have something in common. We realize that our state is messed up and that we have to come together to make it a better state, period, because it affects us all no matter what we got going on in our personal life. So social media platform also, it brought our old organizers and our new organizers together. I heard Dylan mention, the Zens, and I heard Jasmine mention, the ones that went to senior this year and didn't get to go to the prom in high school. I experienced that with my daughter. She graduated this year, no prom, no graduation, Now she's at college, her freshman year, and it's still not the norm. She still have limited access to visit certain places on the campus. So when you take that and add it to the old, or what they did experience, and you put those conversations together, it has been an amazing experience for North Carolina A-Phil Randolph through Zoom calls like this, through putting a relational organizer together and having these conversations and deciding we have the same issues no matter what age you are, no matter where you live at in the state or the country. We have the same crap going on and working. Can I say crap, Jasmine? Have the same crap going on and coming together and organizing and building those relationships. So for me, everything you guys said, because I don't want to repeat everything, but I agree 100% and it's exactly what we're doing. But it's about building these relationships. We can't go and knock on anybody's door right now. But we can send them a blast text message and let them know, hey, did you know that this is going on? My main concentration, of course, is voter registration, voter education, and mobilization. But with it being 2020, I'm all in the census. For my state, we're still trying to recover from 3 or 4 hurricanes before. We know there are more coming because of the climate change and environmental issues. But we don't have the money still to recover. And that's based off that census. So right now we're dead on in census and we're dead on trying to get into the seats, and Empower and relational organizing is also helping us have those conversations and say, did you know how we get funding to to the school or recover from a storm, or how we decide on stuff like how much medical treatment we get for COVID-19 or testing we get for our state. All those dollars come from the results of that census. So being able to plug all that into the relational organizing and have those survey questions and have those conversations with family and friends that we on any other day probably wouldn't talk to because we don't like their collard greens, but we're now gonna have a conversation that says, look, this affects us all. This affects us, everybody. So I'm gonna leave it right there, guys, but thank you for having me here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. So we actually have a question that came in through the Q&A, so I'd love to go ahead and get to that here. It is especially for Emily on the vote captain model, but also more generally. How do folks, keep track of supporters and the voters that they take, responsibility for? And, how do you keep track of knowing the progress and the outcomes of the people that you're mobilizing? So we'll start off with Emily for this one, and then I'll go ahead and call on the rest of the panelists to think about this.
Awesome. That's a great question. So, relational organizing, relational voter turnout, we know is super effective, but it is challenging. And one of the biggest challenges that you might hear people talk about is how to scale it. And there are a lot of great apps out there, namely like Empower, that allow your supporters to upload their phone contacts, and it matches against the voter file. If they have privacy concerns, they can add folks one by one. There's like a big market out there of different apps, but tech is not the solution to our organizing problems. Like a lot of it is about, the bulk of it is about building a really robust and, in my opinion, like volunteer-driven program where volunteers feel invested in the success of the program. And a lot of times that means treating your volunteers like they are staff. So they need visibility into how many voters are we trying to reach through this program? What is our progress to that goal? And what are the tools that I have as a volunteer to make this program successful? And so that's what we're trying to do at Move On through our Mobilize to Win program. What you don't want is the experience of relational organizing to just be your volunteer on their cell phone, disconnected from anyone else, with no accountability and really no motivation to actually do the work of reaching out and organizing their friends. So I was the relational organizing director on the Sanders campaign, and we built special volunteer teams that did the work of basically a field organizer. So calling their fellow volunteers and supporting them through the process, reviewing their friends list with them, right? I see you have 10 friends in Texas. Early voting starts on Monday. Can you reach out to and list out all of the names of the friends and talk to them about voting? So it's an investment in building the systems to make that happen. But in my mind, that's absolutely critical. So your question about how to track supporters and the voters is through an app, although you don't need one. Google Sheets are great. Like there are low tech and no tech solutions to this also. Paper, people can email it in, meeting people where they're at, assessing who's your base and how can you build a program around what works for them. And in terms of progress and outcomes, building out robust volunteer systems where the people who are participating in your program feel like they own it and feel, invested in the success of it.
Awesome, thank you. We'll go ahead to Jasmine next.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
You have a certain order, go ahead.
Just to piggyback what Emily was saying, with my program, I have some phenomenal state coordinators who oversee all of our target states for our relational organizing program. So pretty much, as we always saying, like these battleground states that we want to do a heavy focus on, communities of color between now and the election season or the election day. So our coordinators, they oversee our ambassadors. Our ambassadors are actually young adults who live in this particular state, has ties in this community. So when it's time to reach out to family and friends and colleagues or their teachers, it's people that they know within this particular state that we're really trying to do some heavy GOTV in. And the coordinators, they meet with their teams. We have a strong but busy calendar. I take the time to connect with each coordinator about what we can do to enhance progress within that state. How are the volunteers doing? And the volunteers, to me, are superheroes within itself. They dedicate their time, they dedicate their commitment to mobilize our ultimate goal. For us, we want to increase stronger turnout as part of the most important election of our lifetime. I know we hear that a lot, and we're going to continue to hear that a lot between now and November, but it's actually very true. And so training the coordinators to learn how to interact with their volunteers, You know, in my experience, whether it's campaign, whether it's civic engagement, no dumb question is dumb or stupid. It's just more of a educational moment so that you're out being your best self. A lot of check-ins as well, you know, when there's some issues or there's some things that you might want to refocus on with your volunteers, your coordinators, like having those conversations. That way everyone can meet those metrics and meet those goals. I think also importantly, setting goals that are measurable. I think right now we are in a time where it can be hit or miss. Like a volunteer may not be feeling as energized today as they did yesterday. And so setting goals that are measurable to them to make them feel more comfortable is how we make our message, and how we meet our goals. And I think incorporating a lot of those programming is definitely really important. And it's okay for us to reset and recharge. And I think we've all had to do that in the midst of COVID. Just based off our panel and all the work that we do, a lot of this stuff initially was, you know, we interacted with each other. As Anissa said, we're interacting face to face, we're hugging each other, and we can't really do that. But the great thing about it is we can still do it. We just have to be creative. And I think the relational part has been very, very important, especially with me working with college students or younger adults who are in those transitions from school, or right now we're preparing for college, and college is a different norm than it was prior to COVID. And so meeting them where they are, as we all stated, that way they can be their best organizing self to be better for their leaders and be their teams. And I think also importantly is making sure that we set measurable goals. I know for us with Empower right now, our part of our call to actions and civic interventions is pledge 3 friends to vote. If you pass your 3, add 5 to that. If you pass your 5, add 7. From there, like, we keep that train going. But a lot of our work is around our call to actions, our civic activations, a lot of storytelling to showcase, you know, we are all doing this fight together. But definitely like laying out that program of what you really want, and to have that teachable moment with your volunteers so that they can add on and bring more volunteers too. And then those volunteers can bring those volunteers, those people bring those people. Next thing you know, we have a moving system. And that's been a very success for us, especially right now in the midst of COVID, the protests, and how we're trying to protect the election between now and the next 82 days. But I definitely think it's definitely important that establishing those relationships with your team to make sure everyone's on the same page to grow out and set those benchmark goals is definitely helpful.
Thanks so much. And then Saru, you want to go next?
Sure. You know, I just want to say that relational voting as a concept seems to be fairly new in the voting world. It's really building on the philosophy and methodology of organizing, which has been around for centuries, which really is not about voting. It's about building the leadership of the people most affected to target those in power and change the situation of their lives. And so in that context, in the question of how do you keep it in touch with people and see how they're doing, in our case, we don't call people volunteers. They're members and leaders of our organization. Because the point of organizing is not to get people to vote. It's to build a base of people who are leading their own fight for change long beyond any one election cycle. They are not just getting people elected, they're holding them accountable. They're building power. Sometimes they're taking on and targeting the people they got elected because that's necessary. They're continuing to fight for change post-elections. And I have to say, like, at least with our people, with low-wage worker voters, making it all about an election as the moment, as the goal, doesn't work. Because again, they haven't seen huge changes in their lives from any one election. They see changes when they organize, when they fight. Voting is a part of that, but it's not the end goal. And so to that end, when we relate to people and follow up with people, it's not as volunteers, did you contact your people to vote? It's to develop them as leaders, to bring in their people as members, other people as members, who are then not only talking about voting, they're talking about striking. They're talking about actions on the bus. They're talking about going to the state legislature and holding a rally. They're talking about, how are we going to support each other in this moment? So mutual aid. It's about base building a permanent base for power. And I teach social movements and organizing. That's part of where all of this comes from for me. And I actually spend a whole class where we talk about the voting world and how for a very long time there was, frankly, a bit of antipathy and disrespect between the voting world and the organizing world. I'm going to be honest. The organizing world did not like the voting world. We saw the voting world as transactional, as like you come in, you talk to our people and you leave. We saw the voting world as frankly ignoring our people, because I started this session telling you the voting world ignored our people. And the voting world didn't seem to care about holding elected people accountable. They only seemed to care about getting them into office. And then on the other side, the voting world also looked at us with disdain, like we weren't producing the numbers, we weren't reaching people at the scale that the voting world was reaching people at. So relational voting has been in some ways, kind of harmonizing of these two worlds. But I think where we still need to grow is still that the goal cannot just be voting, it's gotta be building a base. It's gotta be building beyond that. And so when we talk about being in touch with our people, yes, of course, do the diligent work of following up and seeing, have people contacted the people they said they were gonna contact, how many people have they put into the app? But for us, it's so much more than that. It's because they're leaders and members of an organization and they feel ownership over the organization that they do that they reach out to people, and they don't just reach out to them about voting. They reach out to them about a myriad of other things, namely direct action.
Awesome, thanks so much. This is actually a really good segue into another question that came into the Q&A. It's, how do we maybe, or can you talk a little bit about how maybe you help folks channel any anger or frustrations or negative energy into hope, into positive change, in a way to maybe avoid burnout or anything like that? So I'll go ahead and let, Denisha and then Dylan go next.
For me, I would have to say how to channel that energy. Let me reframe. You have to have self-health. You've got to, first of all, in this line of work, what we're doing, you've got to take care of yourself. Your mental, your spirit, all of that, because a lot of times we're so invested in this work that we do not take time to meditate or woosah or anything, and you will get burnt out. You will. I've had my burnout moments, and I had to recollect myself and say, okay, stop. But how do you try not to get to where your burnout is? For me, is in my education piece, is to keyword organizing my timeline, organize what I can commit to and not overcommit. Even though I may see there's 100 issues that is messed up that I want to be a part of, I have to go in and itemize them on what I can actually take care of right now. What is a part of a movement I need to bring on some other friends or partners to address, and how many people I need to do that, and so forth. Because you cannot, there's no way that you can go in. There's a lot of broken stuff going on around us. So you have to educate yourself on each one of those issues, plan, create you a timeline, develop you some partners like this panel right here, and let's come together and collaborate and make it happen. That's how I do it. And then, like I said, self-help. You've got to take care of yourself because we need you there for the long fight.
And then Dylan, if you want to share some thoughts here as well.
Yeah, we're on the question about channeling anger into hope, right? Cool. Yeah, I have to second and third and fourth the community care that we need to be building into our organizations, and relational organizing plays such a good component in that. But I think one of my favorite ways of framing our organizing work, and from Jane McElvee's book, Raising Expectations and Raising Hell, is that when we're talking to people, no matter what it is about, we need to be raising their expectation of what they already have. And so for Sunrise Movement, when we're doing that, all the work that we do is centered around the Green New Deal. And everyone in our movement knows that. Whether we're voting in this election or we're protesting outside a senator's house at 5:30 in the morning, all of it is playing a part in getting us to a world that has a Green New Deal, that we all have valuable jobs and a livable future. And it takes a lot of discipline, right, in our organizations to get to that point, to be able to be bringing that sense of hope to every single one of our members and every single leader across this country. A simple answer is just frame your work in raising expectations of the people you're talking to, and just make sure that you're all clear on the world that you're fighting for. And it's okay to cry and be sad and to feel the emotions, and especially in the year 2020, like, share emotions with each other, but just keep your organizing focused on the prize.
Great. So it looks like we are coming to the end of our webinar here, which I know we could have this conversation for hours and hours on end, and I am so sad we didn't get to all the questions that were coming in. I am going to go ahead and share a slide with everyone's contact information, but if any of our panelists want to get, one final thought in here before we close out, now is your opportunity to do so. Open to anyone. Oops.
I'll just say we're continuing to fight this fight, and it takes all hands on deck. So that's all of us, and we're all fighting just to have a seat at the table to eat and to also bring others. So as we continue to mobilize and all the work that we do, just continue just to be your best leader, to showcase your skills, to pass it on to other people, because we're doing it not only for our generation, but others to come. And having that leadership ability is definitely going to be the key of how we mobilize our future. So thank you so much for having me. Continue to rock the vote, and thank you to the panelists for all the work that you do, because it makes our work and it makes the things that we do worthwhile.
And I'll just add quickly before we end that Organizing Empowerment Project is amazing and can really support you to do the work that Saru was talking about, which is, turning your relational voter turnout program into a true relational organizing program that builds long-term power, and it doesn't, focus on this sort of transactional voter engagement that we have, been kind of stuck doing for too long. So thanks to Organizing Empowerment for organizing this panel. It was fun to participate.
I'd like to chime in and agree and to say thank you, OEP, and all the panelists. It was great to meet you. And I just want to say, organizing in this Organizing Empowerment Project conversation, organizing is used, that word is used in so many different ways by so many different people. When we talk about organizing, we're talking about collective action by the people most impacted, leading their own struggle to do direct action against those in power who are controlling the conditions of their lives. And it is about building power of people. So that's why organizing is about empowerment. It's about shifting the balance in power long-term, which means, again, long beyond any single election. And I'll just say, this election in particular, we know it's so critical in so many ways. And of course, we do need to get everybody out to vote. And if we all sit back after the election and say, wonderful, great, we're done. If Trump is not remain in office, and we all say, great, wonderful, that will be the most disastrous thing I can possibly imagine for our populations, because they will have voted and then say, why did I ever do this, and never do it again. And so we have to continue, keep the base that we're organizing now to fight, to actually win the things we need, not just win certain people into office. Thanks.
So I would say that there's a lot of distractions that's always coming as we get closer. As they mentioned, 82 days, a lot of distractions going to be coming towards us. Do not be distracted. If anything, be the positive distraction with good, solid information and education on what we can do, what will be done. And thank you guys for having me up here. Great team I'm up here with, and thank you all for attending. Thank you OEP for putting this together.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I know that in the chat we've dropped, folks' contact info. It's on your screen as well. I know folks will also be available, I believe, in the hallway here on the app to talk to, where you can email any of us, and we would be happy to chat. And that's all we pretty much have here. I don't know if our host wants to kind of give any final words before we really wrap up here.
Oh, hi. Okay. My only final word is thanks to everyone who came, from organizers, moderators to content presenters who have been amazing, to everybody who came and asked such engaging questions. You've really brought out some important points, and we're incredibly grateful for you because it's the entire pretext to have Netroots. Super weird year, but thank you. Please, everyone, go forth and be radical because there's a lot of work to do.
Happy
Yay!
Netroots.
Okay, I'm gonna close it down now. Thank you all. See you in the hallway.